Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte
There's a full-blown meeting going to happen, probably Saturday or maybe Friday, between Putin and Trump. And it's odd. I mean, even if you remove the issue, Putin has something over Trump, which I continue to believe. Trump is just drawn to him. There's this
he's drawn
affinity
to
there.
power. I mean, it seems like any sort of person who seems to exude a kind of power that he wishes he had.
Yes, indeed, and that's the case with everybody from President Xi to Kim in Korea to Erdogan. But there seems to be something special about Putin that just draws the guy, and we should all be terribly concerned about this, because right now the media is so concerned with other things. We're kind of blowing off the crisis in the Black Sea and the Kerch Straits and Sea of Azov.
Of course, it's between Russia and Ukraine.
And again, the Russian papers, the Russian media, they're beating war drums. Now that may mean nothing in the long run, but Putin's been massing troops, and Putin is very concerned. He wants Ukraine back, at least two-thirds. He believes it belongs to Russia. It's a mystical tie. And he also, on a very practical level, wants a land bridge. He wants a land bridge between Russia and Crimea, not just the $4 billion bridge over the Kerch Strait that he built. There's a crisis with the Ukrainian church, the Orthodox Church, seceding from the overlordship of the Russian Orthodox
Which is a blow to
Church.
Putin.
It's a huge blow to him, image-wise, but also it further divides Ukraine and Russia. So a lot of things that we're ignoring are building to a head. Does that mean Putin's going to get a green light from Trump to invade tomorrow? No, not necessarily. But we need to pay attention.
But you know, to the idea of a green light, if you're a world leader and you're looking at how the U.S. is responding to things, you look at how President Trump has responded to the murder, the butchery of this journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, and how continually, no matter what the CIA says, you have John Bolton saying, well, look, I didn't listen to the tape. I don't speak Arabic. Why would I listen to, a tape of somebody being killed?
That infuriated me. You don't want to listen to that tape? Hey, I don't speak Arabic either. But I will tell you, if you listen to a tape of somebody being tortured to death, you can figure a couple things out. The screams are universal. The gloating tone of the torturer is universal. And these people are cowards for not even listening to the tape. I mean, it just astonishes me that they would take such position. But yes, the president's position on Khashoggi has squandered much of the remaining credibility we have. And, I'm a realpolitik guy. I want what's best for this country, security-wise, internationally. But we've been presented with this false dichotomy, the idea that realpolitik, practical approach to strategy, precludes human rights. Indeed, in the age of hypermedia, when we're constantly bombarded with images of suffering around the world, wise support, rational support for human rights around the world is indeed a part of realpolitik.
Which is interesting because, what the president often says is, well, look, there's a lot of bad people. A lot of bad things happen to a lot of, but you look back at Ronald Reagan, who would talk about a particular Soviet dissident, and even if he wasn't able to make a difference for all Soviet dissidents in one blow, to highlight the plight of one person can make a difference, and it can have a ripple effect.
But the fact that you can't do everything doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything. And yes, picking moral examples, there is a place for ethics, that forgotten word in Washington. Indeed, for morality in our policy, and it doesn't mean compromising our security. What it means is when a legal resident of the United States is murdered in a consulate on foreign soil, that you take a stand on that. And by the way, Anderson, the 1970s are over. We do not need Saudi Arabia.
It is Thursday, the 29th of November of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Hey, wow, they raided Deutsche Bank in Frankfurt. I wonder why. I hear the plaintive cries of Anthony Kennedy's son saying right now, I didn't do it. So curious. Oh, you do know that Anthony Kennedy's son working at Deutsche Bank was the one they're saying did not really approve of Donnie's loans directly. But indirectly, maybe? We don't know. Just one of those strange coincidences, don't you think? Everybody else thinks so. Who knows? Yeah, so that is tied to the Panama Papers, and more is coming out from that. I would think that Donnie would start calling the Panama Papers fake news, a hoax, and move away from the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier is really just the Reader's Digest of the crimes, whereas the Panama Papers is really, the deep dive. Yeah, almost like, I was going to say the Encyclopedia Britannica, but that's not really a deep dive. That's just another reference point. So, yes, indeed. So there's that. What else? Ivanka continues to claim that her breaking the law is the same as Hillary Clinton not breaking the law. Well, you do know, of course, that there was no law against the use of private emails, though she did take the advice from the experts in government and got a private server that was not able to be hacked. I think you would call that unhackable, but I hate using those terms. So one that could not be hacked, and it wasn't. And of course, Ivanka, when she's using her emails for government business, I know she's not really a government employee, but she is when she wants to be, and she isn't when she doesn't want to be. Yeah, one of those. There was a law precluding her from the use of those kinds of emails, and her server is at Trump Tower, tied directly to Alpha Bank. They communicate. The Russian bank, yeah, that one. So, yeah, they are different. And one is patently illegal and probably treasonous, whereas, the other one wasn't. And Trump continues to wonder why the witch hunter Mueller and the angry Democrats. This guy, this is the problem when your mind is wrapped up in professional wrestling scenarios. So, it's true. He doesn't realize he's the bad guy. He's the one that comes in, and there's a lot of people that like the bad guy. When you go to those wrestling matches and stuff, or just watch them on TV, there's a lot of people that like the bad guy, and they cheer him on and whatnot. But eventually the bad guy will, get his leg broke. Or twisted, at least, until he says uncle. Oh boy, it's Thursday. We're getting ready for Friday and the weekend because big things are going to happen. They always do. Looks like all sorts of maybe defections on the Republican side. Maybe they're feeling like maybe we don't want to hang our political hat on this guy. And there's others that still love him. I just don't know. I know that there's historical similarities, tremendously so. Oh, there's a lot of people, and I don't know if it's because of age or what, But they're astounded by the similarities between what happened with the Nixon administration and what's happening now. Oh, well, it was actually posed on Rachel's show. I think she was just being rhetorical. But there's a lot of people I know that are astounded by the similarities. And I have to remind folks, well, the only reason the similarities are there is because Roger Stone, who was in the Nixon administration, albeit a young fellow, but he was a rat fucker, along with Segretti and the others, okay? And in fact, the term rat fucking Stone came up with it. That's what they call themselves. And don't forget also that he, right around that time, just after, formed the little political chop shop with Manafort and Atwater. Roger Stone, Manafort, and Atwater. Goes way back. Roger Stone has a picture of Nixon tattooed on his back. And so Roger Stone thinks that he's put together the dream team to, overturn this travesty of justice that occurred to Richard Nixon. Everybody was doing it. Nixon was the one that got caught. That's what I always heard. And I said at the time, you know what? Only crooks say that. And they do. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Of course, that was former Fox News pundit Colonel Ralph Peters. Yeah, he left Fox because he just thought, this is really a propaganda place. I'm a colonel. I'm a retired colonel. But he had a change of heart a bit of time ago. But, yeah, that was him ripping into Trump for his relationship with Vlad, his ignorance of world affairs, his neglect of the Ukraine situation, and also a special relationship with Vlad. And, with Anderson Cooper, too. So that was rather interesting. And thank you, Colonel Ralph Peters. We needed a little, bracer. On the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, in a sudden purge, numerous top L.A. County Sheriff's officials will be fired or relieved of duty. I call that being sacked. Oh, and that's once Alex Villanueva is sworn in as the new sheriff. Yep, new sheriff in town, and he's going to shake things up. And he better, because I got to tell you, they've been around for a long time, and they need some shaking up and reforming. Oh, yeah. Hey, a Project Veritas-linked operative tried to use Sierra Club credentials to access Democratic campaigns. Yeah, talk about rat fucking. And a new bill could force the White House to reveal what it knows about Khashoggi's murder. Could. Yeah, I'm going to say it will. After the break, we move then to the chef's table, where Trump's racist border stunt means troops won't be home for Christmas. Because, hey, they're tough. Trump says they're tough. They are. There's no lie about that. But, Trump is an idiot. And a newly discovered letter accuses imprisoned Trump aide George Papadopoulos of coordinating with Russia for financial gain after the 2016 election. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Do check out her shows on Saturdays. At the Table with Kelly Lincoln, beginning at 3 p.m. on the West Coast. That is 6 p.m. on the East. And later on, she teams up with Ricky May for the Round Table Roundhouse Power Hour, beginning at 9 p.m. on the West Coast. And, of course, That is midnight on the East Coast. If you would then take a look at the leftish of the page, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute button. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, even a small recurring donation goes a long way here at Netroots Radio. And we are unable to do this without you. And our bills are being paid because of your generosity. So thank you very much for that. And if you can become a recurring Patreon, oh boy, we would really appreciate it so very much. All right. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform, and admirably, I might add. We're over there on Facebook, so you can follow us on Facebook too. Kelly takes care of the Facebook Live platform, and thank you for doing that, Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. You can then also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. We're on Facebook, of course, but you can also, most importantly, pick up podcasts of the show by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays is out of the LA Times by Maya Lau. I should tell you that LA County Sheriff and the LAPD are two entirely different entities, though people from outside the region conflate or confuse the two. Only because they're both corrupt as hell and have had a history of it. Numerous Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officials, including high-ranking executives at the level of chief and above, will be removed from their jobs once Sheriff-elect Alex Villanueva is sworn in on Monday. Those being relieved of duty include the undersheriff, the 4 assistant sheriffs, 8 chiefs, a communications director, and a community outreach director, said Danny Lesserman, a spokesman for Villanueva. He said the department's 2 constitutional policing advisors are being transferred to new jobs with the LA County and will be replaced. Villanueva said previously he would eliminate the constitutional policing advisor positions. Lesserman said Villanueva is elevating some existing department members and bringing back retired commanders for his team. Retired Commander Ray Leiva will be named undersheriff, and retired Commander Robert Olmstead will serve as an assistant sheriff. Industry Station Captain, that's the city of Industry, by the way, Tim Murakami and Lieutenant Lawana Hazelrig, who is assigned to fiscal administration, will also become assistant sheriffs. The purge of nearly the entire executive leadership of the Sheriff's Department will be one of the most sudden in recent years. After Sheriff Jim McDonnell was elected in 2014, he took 2 years to finish assembling his executive team. One of Villanueva's main promises on the campaign trail was that he would rid the department of officials he said contributed to a corrupt culture under previous administrations. I have to tell you, knowing the LA County Sheriff's Department, that just made him a lot of enemies. A lot. One of the sheriff-elect said he was going to clean house, and he meant it. This is just the start, his spokesperson, Lesserman, said. This is about getting rid of the cronyism, getting rid of the dark parts of the department, so we can really restore the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Lesserman said that his statement did not suggest all of those being let go are accused of bad acts. Not all of them. One bad apple, though, you know what they say. But that the sheriff-elect needed to reshuffle the jobs in order to implement his team. Well, yeah. Carol Lynn, the strategic communication director under McDonnell, said she showed up to work Wednesday and was told by a colleague, "We've all been fired." Oh, no, like they didn't know. Lynn said she viewed an email from a member of Villanueva's transition team to a sheriff's department official that contained a long list of names of people whose services would no longer be needed as of Monday. Hers was on it, though she had never been personally told her job was being eliminated. Well, that's not nice. But the communication from the sheriff-elect has been brutal, sudden, and disruptive, said Lynn, who is starting a new job with the county's chief executive office. There's a real tangible brain drain underway. With all due respect to the people coming in, they haven't been here. They're going to start cold with a lot of major issues, and maybe that's the whole point. Department spokeswoman Nicole Nishida said she could not confirm whether the officials were told they would not have jobs under Villanueva's administration, citing privacy concerns. That's the old catch-all, yeah. Other than Lynn, the official subject to being removed could not immediately be reached for comment. Sworn peace officers at the rank of chief and above, if removed from their jobs, are generally entitled to the last civil service protected position they held before they were appointed. For many at that level, the last protected rank they held would be commander. Olmsted, who retired in 2010, is relocating from Nevada and said he plans to be on the job for at least 2 years. Leyva, who took a medical retirement in 2016 because of back and wrist issues, said he intends to return as a civilian and will serve for only 120 days. Both have run for sheriff in the past, Leyva in 2006 and Olmsted in 2014. I'm excited about coming back because I want to get to work with some great people again. I'm pretty humbled that Alex asked me to come back, said Leyva, who has known Villanueva since the late 80s when they worked together at the East Los Angeles station. Villanueva will be sworn in on Monday at East Los Angeles College. Hand of Think Progress brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Sierra Club, one of the nation's oldest and most prominent environmental groups, was infiltrated earlier this year by a right-wing activist with alleged connections to Project Veritas, alleged. A conservative undercover video production company that has faced multiple lawsuits and criminal charges. Southern California conservative activist Ernie White, using the alias Earl White, wow, that's sneaky, began volunteering in the office of the Los Angeles chapter of the Sierra Club in April in an attempt to undermine the organization's work, according to the environmental group. By volunteering with the Sierra Club through an alias, White was hoping to use the environmental group's name in order to gain access to federal campaigns during the midterm election cycle. White made false claims to at least one federal campaign about his volunteer role with the Sierra Club. Previously, he had been identified as part of a Project Veritas group that infiltrated Democrat Kyrsten Sinema's Senate campaign in Arizona, separate from his effort to get inside the Sierra Club. That's the problem when you fight a war on many fronts. You spread yourself a little thin now, don't you? White allegedly approached the campaign of John Tester about doing fundraising work, using his volunteer association with the Sierra Club. He was so persistent in his request for time with Tester's campaign staff that the campaign contacted the Sierra Club's national office to ask about him. A short time before, the Sierra Club received a tip about his infiltration. White was removed from his volunteer role as soon as his affiliation with Project Veritas was discovered in early November. The Sierra Club said it has begun implementing new security practices to ensure that similar operatives intent on harming the organization's staff and volunteers are not successful. Now, the Sierra Club does not believe that White obtained anything embarrassing about the organization or gained access to sensitive information or databases, but we know how Project Veritas works. They film and record, and they splice and dice and put it all back together to make it sound like you've done something criminal. Now, of course, in California, you have to tell the person that you're eavesdropping on that you're eavesdropping on them. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's the law. And this isn't the first time that James O'Keefe and his group have been caught in, well, breaking the law. To mention before we get into this next offering here, in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, I was very, very disappointed that my longtime and now former representative Barbara Lee did not win the chair, unfortunately. But Hakeem Jeffries, the new Dem Caucus chair, even Barbara says he's great, so we'll go with him. I just, Barbara Lee speaks for me, and wherever I am, wherever in the world, Barbara Lee will always speak for me. Okay, let's get on with this next offering, and it is by Casey Michelle out of Think Progress. On Tuesday, a trio of Democratic senators introduced a bill to try to force the Trump administration to reveal what it knows about the people responsible for the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The bill, introduced by my Senator Ron Wyden here in Oregon, Martin Heinrich of New Mexico, and Jack Reed of Rhode Island, calls on the Director of National Intelligence to submit a report to Congress on Khashoggi's death. The report would be due within 30 days of the bill's passage, would identify those who carried out, participated in, ordered, or were otherwise complicit or responsible for the death of Khashoggi. Khashoggi, of course, was brutally murdered in Istanbul, Turkey, where he was ambushed in a Saudi embassy, actually a consulate, then dismembered. Despite the gruesome details of the killing and the presumed culpability reaching up into the upper echelons of Saudi government, the Trump administration has continued to avoid blaming Riyadh outright because it makes me wonder. Khashoggi only came onto Trump's radar because Khashoggi was critical of Trump in the Middle East. And that was the reason why Khashoggi was essentially exiled from Saudi Arabia, and that was the reason why he came to the Washington Post. Does a newly emboldened dictator think they can get away with something? Or was it something else? Was it, is it MBS offering Khashoggi as like a little, a gift, an offering like a cat would bring in a dead bird from outside? Here's a gift for you. I brought it for you. All I can say is that the obvious responses by all involved don't really lean towards expressions of innocence, but it is more than a clarion. It's a bullhorn call of culpability and outright guilt. And I think something needs to be done about it, don't we all? Well, you know what? We better get on to our break. And, of course, when we come back, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, movie mashup. When an A-lister like Liam Neeson is apparently blown up before you get through the buttered part of your popcorn, you know you're in for some serious non-sequential storytelling or some really bizarre plot twists. In the case of Widows, you get both. Based on a Thames TV miniseries from the 80s, the action, transferred to present-day Chicago, finds the widows of some men killed in action, so to speak, in a criminal enterprise having to take on the job of their late husbands for their own survival. Superimposed on the story is a political drama where what seems like an upstart African-American politician is trying to defeat a dying, long-time machine politician who's attempting to install his son in his alderman's seat. Tying the stories together is the fact that the job where the women's husbands died involves stealing $2 million from said politician, who we quickly discover is just a mob boss. So what 12 Years a Slave director Steve McQueen has concocted here is a heist picture that's also a political thriller and a gangland adventure. And it all works, thanks especially to some strong performances. Viola Davis is ready for the front lines as ringleader Veronica. Daniel Kaluuya, the nice guy from Get Out, is a menacing, sadistic enforcer. Robert Duvall, a seedy, disgusting racist, as the retiring alderman. And Colin Farrell, as his son, is wonderful as an opportunistic weasel, almost to the point of stereotype. You can think of Widows as Ocean's 8 that won't be playing on Lifetime in a couple of years. As a film portraying female empowerment, an interesting mind excursion is imagining these women versus the ladies from Oceans. Of course, that picture was mostly a comedy. Exactly what Widows is can be debated, but it's a ride not to miss. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In 2017, approximately 1 in 6 high school students reported a sports or physical activity-related concussion. Immediate symptoms of a concussion include headache, nausea, and double vision. Long-term, the effects of such injuries, particularly those that are more severe, can be life-changing. Healthcare providers, coaches, trainers, and parents should be aware of the symptoms of a concussion and how to treat them. A concussion protocol should be developed that includes withholding an athlete from practice and competition until all symptoms are resolved. While concussions cannot always be prevented, they can be treated in a way that decreases the chances of long-term health problems. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. Cholesterol management. And S. Smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Someone needs to buy a Grassroots USA tour package for the members of Donald Trump's Council of Economic Advisors, so they can at least visit the real world one time in their lives. The 3 advisors are ivory tower ideologues whose sole professional expertise seems to be twisting reality to fit their boss's right-wing fantasia. In July, for example, the trio issued a fairy tale disguised as an official government report on poverty, essentially asserting that our U.S. of A. no longer has a poverty problem. Poof, declared these learned ones from on high. The need for food stamps, Medicaid, public housing, and other assistance has virtually disappeared in our land. Jobs abound, they lectured. The economy is pumping out great gobs of new wealth, and bluebirds of happiness are spreading joy everywhere. You can imagine the comfort that this report has brought to the 45 million Americans now living below the poverty line. That line means they're trying to make ends meet on only $25,000 a year. Not per person, but for a family of 4. Let's see any of Trump's advisors try to live on that before smugly claiming that poverty is largely over. What's at work here is the political manipulation of statistics to support Trump's ideological delusion that poor people are losers who are addicted to safety net programs. As a narcissistic son of privilege, he is out to cut those programs and to impose strict work requirements on families seeking public assistance. Never mind that most recipients of aid already work, subjected to the hardships of poverty by the low wages of their jobs. This is Jim Hightower saying, but that's the real world. And it doesn't mesh with Trump and company's cruel self-deception that basic humane benefits make poverty too pleasant. They're imposing a Dickensian governing ethic that is fundamentally obscene. And even more obscene, it's un-American.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Donald Trump told the New York Post in an Oval Office interview Wednesday that he hadn't discussed a pardon for his former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, but that it's not, quote, off the table.
Just days after we learned the special counsel wants to scrap Paul Manafort's plea deal, President Trump is now publicly discussing a possible pardon for his former campaign chairman. In an Oval Office interview with the New York Post yesterday, President Trump left open the possibility of a pardon, telling the paper, quote, "It was never discussed, but I wouldn't take it off the table. Why would I take it off the table?" In that interview, the president criticized Robert Mueller's investigation, claiming that Manafort, Roger Stone, and Stone associate Jerome Corsi were all asked to lie. He said this, "If you told the truth, you go to jail," Trump said. "You know, this flipping stuff is terrible." The president went on to say, quote, "But I had 3 people, Manafort, Corsi, I don't know Corsi, but he refuses to say what they demanded, Manafort, Corsi, and Roger Stone." He went on, "It's actually very brave," the president said of the trio, "and I'm telling you, this is McCarthyism. We are in the McCarthy era. This is no better than McCarthy," says the president of the United States, talking about the special counsel's investigation.
Meanwhile, Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, told HuffPost that he and Trump had a, quote, quick meeting about pardons, but said, quote, "We both agreed that it made sense not to pardon anybody during the pendency of the investigation." It was a busy day in the Senate on Wednesday. Mike Lee of Utah blocked legislation protecting special counsel Robert Mueller, introduced for a second time by Senators Jeff Flake, Chris Coons, and others who tried to get unanimous consent to schedule the legislation.
Today, President Trump continued his Twitter attacks against Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller, which gave even more ammunition to the majority of the United States Senate that is trying to protect Robert Mueller with legislation that would make it more difficult for the president to have him fired. This legislation is considered even more urgent by Republican Jeff Flake and other senators who support it now that the president has installed Matthew Whitaker as the so-called acting attorney general, who is now in a position to supervise and impede the investigation. Senator Flake was once again blocked by Senate Republicans in his attempt to get a vote on his bill today, which is co-sponsored by Democrat Chris Coons and other Democrats, and it is also supported by enough Republicans to easily pass the Senate.
And I have informed the Majority Leader that I will not vote to advance any of the 21 judicial nominees pending in the Judiciary Committee or vote to confirm the 32 judges awaiting confirmation on the Senate floor until S-2644 is brought to the full Senate for a vote.
Flake actually followed through on that threat, voting no on the motion to advance Thomas Farr's nomination to be a federal judge in North Carolina. Mike Pence had to cast a tie-breaking vote to clear a procedural vote and advance him toward confirmation. Farr wrote the North Carolina voter ID legislation that the federal courts found were specifically designed to disenfranchise African-American voters. It's unclear whether Tim Scott, the sole African-American Republican in the Senate, will vote for confirmation or not. His will be the deciding vote. Due to the standoff, Chuck Grassley then canceled votes on nearly 24 of Trump's judicial nominees that were expected to come up in the Judiciary Committee this week. Meanwhile, Trump's BFF, Lindsey Graham, is making a similar threat, saying he'll withhold support on any key vote until the CIA briefs the Senate on its assessment of whether Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the killing of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The Senate on Wednesday offered a rebuke to the Saudis over that killing as they voted to advance a bill introduced by Bernie Sanders that would end U.S. military support for Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. NBC's Andrea Mitchell has more.
The powerful Saudi crown prince, who the CIA believes likely ordered the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, arriving in Argentina for a summit where he will brush shoulders with President Trump, even as critics say the administration is covering up his role in Khashoggi's death. The CIA director not showing up to brief all 100 senators today, angering many.
How can I make an informed decision as a United States senator about whether or not the Crown Prince is complicit in a murder if I don't have access to the intelligence that I read about in the paper?
Instead, the Secretary of State, himself a former CIA director, arguing the CIA has no proof.
There is no direct reporting connecting the Crown Prince to the order to murder Jamal Khashoggi.
But spy agencies rarely have a smoking gun like an eyewitness. Bipartisan criticism is growing.
After the briefing, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was asked why CIA Director Gina Haspel wasn't there to give the CIA's assessment of the killing. His response?
I was asked to be here, and here I am.
But senators were very frustrated. Normally, in your past role as CIA director, you would be here briefing these senators on an issue this sensitive. Why isn't the CIA director herself here?
I was asked to be here, and I'm here.
The final race of the 2018 midterms has been decided. Democrat Anthony Brindisi defeats GOP U.S. Representative Claudia Tenney in an upstate New York race settled 3 weeks after the election. That brings the total number of seats gained by the Democrats to 40. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. For more, go to NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. 2 days after a Russian attack on Ukrainian ships near Crimea sparked fears of a major military escalation in the region, an American and European consensus on how to respond to the incident appears to have failed to materialize. Senior foreign policy officials in Poland and Estonia say the attack should serve as grounds to increase Russian sanctions, but the leaders of France and Germany, the most powerful EU decision-makers, have largely punted the issue. European foreign ministers, meanwhile, aren't expected to discuss sanctions until December 10th, a far cry from their frenzied response after Russia's 2014 invasion of Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine later in the year. And even if European leaders do end up agreeing to new sanctions, that could have little effect across the Atlantic.
I think it's doubtful that pressure from Europe is going to change anything for the administration.
Emma Ashford is a foreign policy research fellow at the Cato Institute.
It's not clear that the Europeans, even if they wanted to or were going to make a concerted push, could actually induce this administration to take steps on Russia. I think there's just too much disagreement inside it.
U.S. officials say Sunday's attack is reason to maintain existing Russian sanctions, but Ashford thinks sanctions dating back to 2014 have largely run their course.
They did have a little bit of an economic impact. It's basically over now. The Russians have fixed that problem. Politically, the sanctions have been completely useless. That's partly because it's very difficult to coerce a big country like Russia, and partly because, particularly this administration, hasn't even tried to use the sanctions to get the Russians to make concessions in exchange for removing the sanctions.
While some more extreme sanctions options, like cutting off Russia from the SWIFT financial clearinghouse or imposing an oil embargo on the country, could make Russia pay, they could also heighten the risk of the very military tensions the sanctions aim to avert. Hence, the most likely reaction to Sunday's incident could be none at all. Luke Vargas, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh my. Well, we do have city equipment moving about here in our little village of Rogue River in southern Oregon. So if you hear a bit of a rumble, it's because we are currently under a winter storm watch here. And we'll get into that in just a moment, because we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Cloudy conditions. Winds light and variable out of the east. A light rain currently. We are looking at a high of about 51, 52 degrees. Winds will pick up to 5 to 10 miles per hour after shifting out of the west-southwest. We're expecting, almost a little less than a quarter of an inch of rain today, with a smidgen less of a quarter of an inch overnight. But we are looking for more than a quarter of an inch tomorrow, and it will be a little cooler tomorrow with a high of around 48. So winter storm watch. Looks like it is at elevation and is an active storm watch right now. Snow levels are now coming down to 4,200 feet. That's getting low, so take care if you're traveling about. All right, let's see. Pollen continues to be rated as none, and meaning that there is no pollen there. That's what they're registering. And it's not because they don't have data. They would tell me no data. Unfortunately, that air quality index is in the safety orange range of moderate at 56 parts per million. A lot of people burning wood in their fireplaces. They got to stay warm. And the daytime UV index is getting to that wintertime low of 1. I don't think it's going to get less than 1, but you never know. Barometric pressure is at 29.39 inches and holding. Visibility is down to 7 miles. Let's see. We have a cloudy ceiling at 4,900 feet, and that relative humidity is 96%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is registering 53 and partly cloudy with a weather warning, and let's see what that is. Oh my, they are a potential disruption due to wind Right now, they are experiencing 10 to 20 miles per hour with gusts in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range. So they don't like that in London. Right. Let's see. Paris is 55 degrees with a rain shower. Rome is 56 degrees and sunny, also with an active weather watch for high winds that could disrupt their electrical grid. And they're in the same range of 10 to 25 miles per hour, a little bit more than that, than what was experienced in London. And their gusts are at 50 to 60 miles per hour. So, getting on to the gale range. Kiev is 19 degrees and fair. Kabul is 41 degrees with smoke. Yow. Hong Kong, 66 and cloudy. Tokyo, 53 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, is 63 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California, is 56 degrees Fahrenheit with rain and wind and an active gale warning watch. Right now, winds are out of the south-southeast. There's a big cell of rain in your area. And winds will then shift out of the west-southwest at 25 to 30 miles per hour with gale force winds. And New York is 44 degrees, partly cloudy. Boy, there's active weather warnings all over the nation. And you have a small craft advisory for winds. It's windy out there, so hold on to your hats. Button up, batten down the hatches, and keep warm. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. In the midst of World War II, Bing Crosby recorded the song I'll Be Home for Christmas about soldiers in Europe longing to be with their family for the holiday. At that time, Americans were fighting Nazis. Fast forward to 2018, and Trump, who coddles Nazis, is forcing troops to be separated from their families during the holidays, but not for any noble cause. Trump is expected to prolong the deployment of thousands of troops along the southern border into January. The troops were originally supposed to come home no later than December 15th, and the Pentagon recently indicated that everything was on schedule for service members to come home soon. Instead of spending time with their families at either Thanksgiving or Christmas, troops are shoveling horse manure out of Border Patrol horse stalls, which is exactly the way that Trump wants it. He hates the regular troops. They're a bunch of losers. Not like his, SA Gestapo, like the Border Patrol. Now, those are loyal soldiers. The Pentagon reports, I should interject, in this reporter's opinion. The Pentagon reports that the deployment is a giant waste of resources and a morale killer to boot. The deployment was part of a racist pre-election border stunt from Trump, meant to gin up xenophobia and encourage the Republican base to go vote. The ploy failed spectacularly, as Democrats are now on pace to pick up 40 House seats. I think they have. But Trump isn't giving up on the charade, and since he's already showed a callous indifference to using troops as a political prop over Thanksgiving, well, he shows a callous indifference to Washington Post reporters being dismembered in a Saudi consulate. I mean, I can understand because of all the billions of dollars he thinks he's going to be getting from the Saudis. God, this guy is delusional. The reason Donald Trump has no problem wasting military resources and keeping troops away from their families for a political stunt is that he does not respect them or their service. Now, that was Will Fisher, Director of Government Relations for Vote Vets. It's beyond insulting to those who have or who are currently serving in uniform. I think it's an insult to anybody who considers themselves to be a patriot and an American. And I don't mean making America great again. That isn't the America that we know and love. Now, NPR reports that the extension comes days after U.S. agents fired tear gas at migrants who tried to cross into the United States from Tijuana, Mexico, which is a legal port of entry, and that's where they're supposed to go. Trump's use of chemical weapons against families with small children earned a rebuke from the American Academy of Pediatrics, as we expressed yesterday. But it got a gleeful response from members of the Trump administration. Instead of letting military service members spend well-earned time with their families over the holidays, Trump is forcing them to waste time putting up fences and shoveling horse manure while Border Patrol agents fire tear gas and possibly use lethal force against refugee families fleeing violence. And the Christmas story itself is, of course, about a refugee family fleeing violence. But you're just going to have to camp out in that tent city until we can find you a place in the inn. And the inn will be a big supermax prison out there in the desert.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Matthew Chapman of Alternate brings us this final offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it looks like just as Papadopoulos reported to federal prison to serve out his 2-week plea bargain sentence for lying to investigators in connection with the Russia probe, well, Papadopoulos, whose remarks to an Australian diplomat about Russian dirt on Hillary Clinton partly triggered the Russia investigation in the first place, had been requesting a delay of a sentence but was denied by a federal judge. But now, even as Papadopoulos gets out of jail in mid-December, his troubles may not be over. According to a report from The Atlantic, the House Intel Committee is now looking into a letter from a source claiming that Papadopoulos sought a business deal with the Russians that would benefit himself and Trump, and that he did so in the weeks after Trump was elected. The information could potentially open up a new liability for Papadopoulos, but it also raises questions about whether Trump knew and approved of this supposed business deal, which could suggest another element of collusion. Look, Trump wants his VIG. Papadopoulos was bringing him a VIG. That's how it works over there. Well, I think it's going to shake out a lot more now that Deutsche Bank's been raided. Follow the marks, follow the rubles, follow the money. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But of course, Netroots Radio broadcasts on. We'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Oh, don't we deserve that? So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.